Good morning, friends. It is March 15th. My name is Greg Simpson, and this is our daily Lenten Devotional. A few of you have commented over the last little while that we're getting into some pretty heavy topics, and I completely agree with you. I'm not going to apologize because I do think that Lent is a time that we are called to dig deep into our faith, to do some introspective work, and in the process of that, we're going to encounter stories that make us uncomfortable, and we've had a bunch of uncomfortable. So, this morning, we're going to head in a different direction, so hopefully this brings you a little more comfort. We're going to read in the book of Hebrews today. We're reading Hebrews chapter 4, verse 14 through to chapter 5, verse 4. So it's really only just a couple paragraphs, but it spans a chapter break there and following along in a Bible at your own pace. So, Hebrews 4:14. Since then, we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God. Let us hold fast to our confessions. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who in every respect has been tested as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore approach the throne of grace with boldness, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Every high priest chosen from among mortals is put in charge of things pertaining to God on their behalf, to offer gifts and sacrifices for sins. He is able to deal gently with the ignorant and wayward, since he himself is subject to weakness. And because of this, he must offer sacrifice for his own sins as well as for those of the people. And one does not presume to take this honor, but takes it only when called by God, just as Aaron was. The book of Hebrews continues to talk much more about this idea of Jesus as the high priest, but I'm going to stick with this particular piece. This thread kind of carries right through the book of Hebrews. I really love that this describes Jesus as knowing us, because he too was tested the way we are tested. He too lived a life the way we live a life. There's something interesting going on here, and the book of Hebrews does this. In fact, many of the books of the New Testament, especially after the Gospels and even after Acts, so the letters, I would say, the epistles, they do a lot of theology, where they're actually trying to consider exactly who God is, or they do Christology. They try to consider exactly who Christ is. And that makes them stand out as a little bit different from lots of other parts of the Bible. We look in parts of the Old Testament, and there's less work, I guess it depends on where you look, but there's less work of trying to identify and actually write out on purpose, here is who Jesus is for us in our world today, or at least for the Hebrews in the time when this was written. And I say that on purpose because we have spent 2,000 years doing theology. Humans have explored this and worked on this many, many, many different ways, probably about as many different ways as there have been humans between then and now. So theology is this ever-changing, ever-shaping, ever-evolving work that is being done. Who is God to you? Who is Christ to you? And we are invited to do that work for ourselves. There are certainly some denominations and some religious organizations who try to push people away from doing that work for themselves, sometimes because they believe that people who don't have theological training don't have the tools to do that work. But really, it's simply asking the question, who does God feel like to you? And it's great because we have books like Hebrews and Romans especially that do this work on our behalf, or at least on behalf of the people of this time frame. So I invite you in this moment to speculate. Who is God to you? Or maybe we'll narrow it down a little bit so it's more specific to this. Why is it important to you that Jesus was fully a man. We have lots of examples. Certainly the Gospels talk lots about Jesus being fully a man. Then I think this is one of the holy mysteries that we get a chance to sit with. We, I think, all generally agree that Christ was fully human and fully divine. But how do you do both of those at the same time? And truly, even just reading through the epistles, we will get different sort of angles and viewpoints on that. We have certainly one spot where it talks about how Jesus emptied himself of holiness to become man, describing that Jesus existed as something fully divine and fully holy before he spent time here on earth. That's one description of a Christology. And I love the way that is described because it reminds us that Jesus was fully human. Because I think sometimes in our religious experiences, it's easier for us to sit with the very godly Jesus. It's maybe because we don't want to step too deeply into the sacrifice part of his story. We don't want to think of it as being a man who willingly gave up his life. It might, as we're approaching Good Friday and Easter, it might be easier for us to think about God and Jesus, like God the Father, Jesus the Son, and their relationship, and Jesus dying because God asked him to. Perhaps that's easier than sitting with a man who went willingly towards his death. And none of us can exactly figure out how that fits. Much ink has been spilled. Many words have been written. Many people have gotten very angry about exactly what this means. So I want to pull us right back to what this is talking about. That Jesus, because he walked this earth, because he lived as a human, he gets us. He can sympathize with us. He can feel what it's like to hurt, to be confused, to walk through pain and anguish, to love and be loved. The very human part of Jesus might be tricky for us to wrap our heads around, but it really, really gives me deep hope for all of humanity. It gives me deep hope in the times when I'm really struggling, because I know that I am known by God, who is infinite and far beyond my ability to understand, through Jesus, a man who walked on this earth, a person who experienced being a person. To be known at that level blows me away, and it makes me feel really good. It makes me feel very comforted in my relationship with God, my relationship with Jesus. Being known, I think, is one of those base requirements that we need as humans. I think it's one of those things that being isolated has really, really hurt us, whether it's isolation through lockdowns or the isolation that we sometimes find in our modern media, where we know of people, but we're not known by people. We're kind of missing that being known. Yet, God knows us. And God knows us not in a faraway creator of the universe way, but in a I've walked in your shoes as a man on this earth sort of way. A man who had friends. A man who saw a broken, a hurting world and responded to it in the ways that he knew was best. A man who has given us examples of how to treat the people around us. A man who comes to us and says, I know that it's really tough for you right now, and it is okay to be not okay. It's okay to struggle. It's absolutely fine to not know what way is up. I've been here. I'm with you. I empathize and I sympathize. We're going to get through this together. There are some days that I really need the Christology of Jesus as a man who's walking with me, a human who knows what it's like to be on this planet. I love being known. Let's pray. God, we thank you for all the different ways that we can see and experience you and your divine presence, but especially today, we thank you for the person of Jesus, an itinerant minister who wandered in ancient Palestine, a man who saw the damage and hurt in the world that he lived in, and he acted and spoke and did things to try and make a difference. A man who knows us. Thank you for the gift of being known. Amen. And thank all of you for the gift of us getting to know each other. We don't share quite as deeply, certainly, as Jesus knows us, but I really enjoy that we're getting to know each other. We're getting to see what particular scriptures are meaningful to each other. We're getting to know what things we really get frustrated around, or the things that cause us to grieve. Thank you for all the ways that you share and you let me get to know you. All the way down to saying, Greg, we've had some really hard stuff for a while. Can we just have something comforting? Absolutely. The comfort of being known by Christ. If you've missed any previous videos, I invite you to click over there, click the thumbs up button while you're down there. I would love it because it tells YouTube that this is great stuff to share. Click subscribe to make sure that YouTube gives you videos, and I will see you again tomorrow. I love you all. Bye for now.